Hey, Fringe listeners, we're sharing a favorite episode of the Stood in the Gap podcast today with my friend, show host, Derrin Slack. These episodes, they go deep. I hope you enjoy this story as much as I do. And go follow the show. We'll link it in the show notes.
Success is not achievable alone. We all have a story of a person who took a risk, someone who imagined a life greater than what we could, someone who stood in the gap. This show shares those someones, those unsung heroes who pushed us when we could have settled for what is. I'm Derrin Slack, and this is Stood in the Gap, the show that focuses on the who, not the how, behind a leader's success. On this episode, we have Al White, who's advisor of social impact, focusing on employee engagement, and the VP of Lilly Foundation at Eli Lilly and Company. So Al, thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me, Derrin. I appreciate it.
Al, you have been a very good friend, advisor to me, and mentor over the years. And so I'm just so glad to learn more about your story, though, and really get to the deep parts of who you are. But before we do that, let's play a game.
Let's do it.
Play this game called This or That. And I'm just going to rapid fire some questions to you, and you answer the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. Be a cyborg or completely human?
Human.
Be a dragon or unicorn?
Unicorn.
Famous musician or actor?
Musician, for sure.
Be a genius or be wealthy?
Genius.
Be a hammer or a nail?
Hammer.
Be a happy fool or a troubled genius?
A happy fool.
Be a hero or a villain?
An absolute hero.
Be a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret?
Navy SEAL all day.
Ninja or samurai?
I'm going with a samurai.
So poet or a scientist?
Poet.
Good. Yeah, I knew that one. Well, thanks for playing, Al.
It was fun.
Yeah. Well, I want to learn more about you and your story. And so talk to me about where you come from and like what brought you to your role today at Lilly.
Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, ironically in Albert Einstein Medical Center. But I was not named after the famous Albert Einstein. We moved to Delaware when I was a toddler, and I spent my, I guess you could say, formative years in Dover. Had what I would call not necessarily a normal childhood, or traditional, I should say, in a sense. My mother and father divorced when I was in the third grade. My mother was a school teacher, but my father, came from a background, if you will, of what you would almost call, in some sense, not quite organized crime, but he was a drug dealer. Bottom line, he graduated from college, but his father was a numbers runner in New York City. And unfortunately, the saying of you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And my grandfather was murdered when I believe I was roughly in about the third or fourth grade. And I say that, my father was a product of his environment. I don't necessarily judge him, but that's what he knew coming up. And while he was educated, he carried on that lifestyle. So, I was exposed certainly to a lot of different things growing up, like I said, that you wouldn't necessarily call traditional. But look, it's shaped me. It's made me the person that I am. I've learned a lot from it, a lot of what not to do, frankly. But also, I think both of those have, helped me.
So, Al, I'm noticing your story that there's like a pattern or a generation of crime in your family. So your grandfather's involved, your father, and now you. And so that's some tough shit for people to get through. So talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because even though I knew what my father was doing, that wasn't always the case for me. I lived with my mother, right? So typically I was not with my dad. They were divorced. I'd stay with him, but it was a very different environment. But then he was getting locked up in and out of prison. And most of I think all through high school, he was locked up with the exception of maybe my freshman year. I was a little bit of a golden child. I was in student council. I raced BMX. And I tell you that, one, it was a passion of mine, but I had what I would then call a mentor. His name was Ronnie Roach, and I raced for Schwinn. And so he worked at the Schwinn shop And he was literally like an idol to me. We all have that, that person growing up. And he was as clean could be as far as, not doing drugs and things of that sort. But somebody had introduced him to marijuana. And Ronnie started smoking marijuana. So I saw Ronnie do it. And I'm like, if Ronnie can do it, I can do it. And that was literally one of the kind of pivotal moments for me, because my dad really had kind of kept me away, even though I knew what he did, from a lot of that. But then that was kind of like this commonality that me and my father now had, right? And so the next thing you know, it goes from smoking weed to now becoming interested in what my father's doing, frankly, which is honestly, he was dealing drugs. I mean, he was one of the largest drug dealers in Delaware at that time. And so that's how I kind of got involved in it. It's kind of a weird little, it wasn't a direct line, let's put it that way, to my father, but it happened through somebody that I absolutely trusted and looked up to in a very innocent way.
You grew up with your mom, but did you ever feel like dealing drugs was a way to like empathize with your dad or connect to him? Like, how was that relationship?
Looking back on it, it absolutely probably was at that time, because the reality is I was a mama's boy, loved being with my mom. My dad had, 2.5 acres out in a place called Woodland Beach in outside of Smyrna, Delaware. And so while it was this nice property and things of that sort, all my friends were back where, my mother lived in Dover. And it was really oftentimes my dad and I and his second wife. And so there probably was a piece of that gave us this connection, if you will. I mean, literally to the point I can remember sitting up late at night counting thousands of dollars for him. I don't remember what the number would have been, because I was, probably 12, 13 years old, and, it was way over my head. But that's some of the things I would do. So yeah, there probably was that.
So after like getting involved in drugs from someone that's not your dad, but someone tertiary, what happened next?
It's kind of the typical movie scene, if you will, or what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of storyline that plays out. Boy, girl smokes a joint. Boy, girl begins to drink. Boy, girl then escalates to maybe doing other drugs and so forth. And then boy, girl begins to also deal drugs. And for me, it kind of went just that way. Now, the difference is most people who get in that situation do not have a father who is a well-known drug dealer, right, with access to resources, if you will. And so that is where it went for me, to obtaining drugs, if you will, from my father and selling them and then making my own money. Now, all of a sudden, you've got this cash flow coming in as a 14-year-old. And I can go out and buy my own Nikes, right? And not have to ask my mother and purchase whatever else I want to do. And so, you then get caught up into, that aspect of it, of being able to not only have the things you need, but the things you want, and that, frankly, others idolize.
So you're a golden child and selling drugs on the side. So how'd you get caught?
My sister and I are, if you will, working together. My father's locked up. She didn't live in the house anymore, but I was running drugs out of my mother's apartment. And we had become well known as well for selling drugs. And at some point in time, it's just like anything else. Somebody else gets in trouble and they become an informant. And so the state police were notified of our activities through, one of their CIs. And then there was an investigation that ensued for some time, leading up to an arrest one night. Police coming into my mother's apartment, raiding it, and so forth.
So in that low moment then, so what were those 6 to 10 words that changed your life?
I was arrested and I had to go to court. And this is this summer before my senior year of high school, so it's supposed to be one of the best times of your life. And here I am worried about whether I'm going to be sent to juvie or I get to finish out my high school career and graduate. And, I had a lawyer and, he's fighting on my behalf. And all I can remember is the state's attorney, if you will, and him just saying, we think Al White should go to Ferris Detention Center, which is a boys detention center in Delaware. And that's all I can remember hearing him say, just repeatedly, if you will. And so the judge had made his decision, and it was to send me to Ferris Detention Center. So the bailiff comes and gets me. My mother and my grandmother are there. Mind you, my father is locked up, by the way. And I just remember looking at them and terrible feeling for a couple of reasons. One, absolutely letting those two ladies down that have, helped raise me. And then just feeling absolute pity for myself. They take me into a holding facility, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm getting ready to get locked up and go to a juvie home during my senior year. A couple of minutes later, he takes me back to the courtroom, and the Judge Kelsey, I still remember his name, says, I want you to remember those last 3 minutes for the rest of your life. And as you can see, I still remember those last 3 minutes for the rest of my life. That was somebody who gave me an opportunity, a second chance, if you will. It was at that moment, right? And you kind of got to make a decision. There's pretty much a fork in the road. And I took full advantage.
So those 3 minutes, they were so impactful for you. What did you do after that to not repeat those 3 minutes again?
There are a few things that have to happen, right? You're influenced by your environment, by your friends. Some of those friends are still going to be there. I would say, so I don't know that I consciously did anything different outside of, I know I shouldn't be dealing drugs, right? But it was about surrounding yourself, right, by the right people. And that's very hard to do. No matter what you say, these are people that you've grown up with, for better or worse. They've had your back is the way you look at it. But you've got to, in the best way you can, begin to rid yourself of some of those folks. And probably what helped me also is I went to college. So that was kind of an automatic kind of separator. Now all of a sudden you're around a sphere of friends, if you will, or a circle of friends who have some of the same interests, you know what I mean, are striving to, improve their lives and things of that sort through higher ed. And so, again, being a product of your environment, you take some of that in, and you have almost no choice but to kind of start moving forward. The other thing I would say too, and I have to give my mother credit for this, is there were only a couple of options. You're going to college, or you're going to the military, or you're going to get a job. There was always an influence from my mother, her friends, and my grandparents. She had a group of friends who were all professionals. They were either educators or working in private industry, things of that sort. And so while I was having some of my challenges as I was coming up and things of that sort, I was always around, right, a group of folks that were professionals that would talk to you about not only just the right and wrong, but the different opportunities that are out there, but would also plant that seed, is a better phrase, of, hey, you're a good kid. Keep up the good work. You're doing this, you're doing that. Stay focused. All those types of things that it's important for us to hear, to know that we're valued and we have the ability to do anything that we put our minds to. And even though I had done wrong and I had let them down, I still had their support. They still had confidence in me, and they never gave up on me. And that was incredibly important to me, because I believe, had they said, you know what, we're done with you, I'm not sure what would have happened, but they still had the belief in me. They still helped me pay for college. They still encouraged me on a daily basis to graduate from high school and go to college.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of people standing in the gap for you along the way.
Absolutely. Folks really did not give up on me. And, it's funny to have this not funny, but this conversation has caused me to reflect in a way in which maybe I have not done, and to really think about those individuals who have played an important role in my life. And sometimes it was just simply because they did not give up on me.
Is there anyone that you want to pay homage to right now?
Well, certainly, look, my mother has always been my rock. Has always been there for me. So always a shout out to my moms. And look, for the challenges that even my dad and I have had in our relationship, I am still who I am because of him. And so, I have to give respect to him and my grandparents on my mother's side, but they were there through thick and thin. And look, I've got a number of friends back home and a circle of friends here who kind of keep me on the straight and narrow, if you will, which I absolutely appreciate.
So what values from your life then guide you? What keeps you grounded now?
When I think about values, for me, I do believe absolutely integrity is incredibly important. And we'll all be tested, so it doesn't mean that, we're always 100% full of integrity, if you will. But I think we will be challenged at times where, we then have to do the right thing, saying that maybe we did screw up, frankly, right? But what is the right thing to do? So I think for me, there's a piece of integrity that is in the core of who I am. I don't know if you can call family, if you will, a value, but I value my family dearly. And I think that's really grown over time. Again, given my own background, I think I had some challenges there early on, but as you start to have kids and so forth, that changes. And so they've certainly shaped what I would then call my next value, and that's kind of perspective. I think perspective is incredibly important, probably always has been, but as we think about what we're kind of going through today, we've been in a pandemic now for all of 10 months, I believe, almost a year. I still have a job. I still have a house. I can purchase food and so forth. And there are many folks out there that are absolutely hurting. And so while it seems pretty tough that I have to remain in my home, the majority of the time, and woe is me, right? There are folks who have it far tougher. So perspective is incredibly important to me.
As we close today, Al, if you were to look back on your younger years and your formative years, what do you wish that you would have known then that you can give as advice to our listeners today?
One of the most important things as I look back at it is to truly embrace your education. And I absolutely mean that, because it is the foundation to a person's success. It is a key to a much greater world than if you grow up in, the Near East side of Indianapolis and have maybe never left the city. The education that, is given to you, we have to take full advantage of. And I myself did not. I was lucky, is the way I consider myself. But to truly embrace, experience the full education that's provided to you, I think is so incredibly important for youth.
So talk to me about what education means to you. Is it just going to school, or is it just experiencing new things?
You know what? So actually, and you touched on it, education itself is an experience. So it's about embracing the full experience. Academics is one part of it. Meeting new people that aren't like you is another part of it. Field trips, those experiences that help shape us. And that's what I mean by embracing. And I'm glad you said the experience piece, embracing the whole education experience and what it has to offer, because that is ultimately, again, what helps shapes us. And it allows us to kind of dream. When you're learning, you're growing, and we should never stop growing. So therefore, we have to continue to learn.
Get outside our comfort zones.
Absolutely. I mean,
dive
look,
in.
Let's think about it. You've had the opportunity to travel internationally. I've had the opportunity to travel internationally. And those experiences have helped shape me, have helped give me perspective and so forth. And so I would not be the person I am without those experiences. And so I only wish that the youth of today would have those same experiences.
Well, it's our job to give it to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's our job to make a way and trailblaze. So Al, thank you so much for your time, brother. It was so great to talk to you and get to learn more from you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Absolutely enjoyed the discussion.
This show is all about how we can propel each other and our communities forward. So each episode, we feature an organization that lives out this mission. Today, we are featuring...
Hi everyone, it's Alina Nguyen from Recovery Cafe Lafayette, and we are a peer-based recovery community supporting individuals recovering from mental health, addiction, homelessness, domestic violence, and trauma. We hold monthly sober social events for our members to have a safe space to celebrate and socialize with others who are also in recovery. We are currently looking for sponsors to cover the cost of our upcoming monthly sober social events. Our organization is searching for support to cover the cost of food, supplies, and decorations. If you're interested in sponsoring our event or volunteering as a cafe companion at our organization, please reach out to me. My contact information is on our website at recoverycafelafayette.org. Thank you so much, and we appreciate all your support.
If there's a mission or cause you care about, you can get them on the show by emailing me at Derrin@proactindy.org. That's DERRIN@proactindy.org. Now, let me ask you, who stood in the gap for you? What are the words that changed your life? If you can answer that question, then I want you on the show. Send me a message at Derrin@proactindy.org. That's Derrin, DERRIN, @proactindy.org.